Hi, I'm Adam and this is the Uplink Port. On today's episode, they say that things happen for a reason, and over the years I've fully come to appreciate and understand that more and more. But hopefully in today's video that's to our advantage and we can breathe some life back into a piece of old kit that probably would have ended up in e-waste if we hadn't rescued it off eBay. So whether you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Right, so a bit of background. Now I'm not going to handle this too much because the plastic on this creeps like no tomorrow and was quite evident in the last video I did where I handled it at the end. So we're going to leave it out of the way and I'm just going to ramble for a bit. So this is the BT Home HUB 1, not to be confused with the smart hub of the current generations gone by. This was typically supplied to customers back in 2005 to 2006 and is version 1 or version 1.5 of its generation at the time. Now there was a unit before this, 0.5, which had none of the integrated phone or TV services. This was at the time the first triple play router out on the market that offered customers internet access, VoIP and also TV, all integrated into one device. Now the difference between version 1 and 1.5 is basically the colour. Version 1 came in white with the optional decked phone. Version 1.5 also came in white with the optional decked phone, but you could also get it in black. Version 2 was only available in black, and there's a couple of versions thereon that had different variants of different colours. Now, I don't know if I have version 1 or version 1.5. It doesn't say it anywhere on the stickers or anything like that. So I'm going to err on the side that this is version 1, given the amount of use it's potentially have, and we will stick with that. But typically this was supplied with BT total broadband connections back in the day, and BT were actually one of the first providers not only to do a triple play router but also the first service provider to actually lock their routers to prevent customers making changes to them or moving to another service provider and taking their router with them, which poses several problems for us moving forward, which we'll touch on later. But overall, it's potentially contributed to a load of e-waste and a load of ways that manufacturers do things over the years, especially ISPs, and I fully appreciate why ISPs do it, because of course there is a cost involved in hardware, but surely at the end of the contract term, customers should be able to reuse it and move elsewhere with it. But that is typically what happened back in the day. All of these type of mainstream devices were locked to particular ISPs. So in terms of lock and moving forward, now this is locked to BT Total Broadband. The voice service that was on this is locked to BT Broadband Talk or their Fusion service. That is all long since dead and has been replaced with current modern day variants of it. I have no idea if any of these are still working on the modern variant. I have no idea if any of these are even still actually being used to this day. Obviously there are still some ADSL only connections out there, but I have no idea if this particular version of device is still working. So in terms of them being locked, that poses a massive problem for us. Number one, obviously with all of the devices I've got behind us, we can obviously configure all the login details for them. However, locked routers will have their username and password for the PPPoE or PPPoA, I have no idea what this uses, physically in the device that you cannot edit. Now, obviously with all of this isn't a problem with these ones because of course I can create usernames, change them in there and off we go. With this, I cannot change it. It's physically coded into the firmware. Now, there might be a way to hack or jailbreak or whatever you want to call it, this and actually be able to change them. However, I want to keep this very original to the course in which we're trying to do this for. So number one, we need to get this online from a broadband perspective. Now, hopefully this is using the generic BT login details that are currently still in use today and very well documented on the internet. If that is the case, and as we have the complete control of the radius process from start to finish, we should be able to put the BT details in our radius server, and then this should get discovered and then connect and come online. So that hopefully should work. If the password in this is not the same as what's currently documented on the internet, then we may run into a problem. If this is using CHAP for the PPP process, then obviously the password is going to be hashed and we're not going to see it. Now, we could Wireshark a load of this, and that's what we're going to end up doing for the phone, but for the actual physical connection side of stuff, it may pose a problem if they're not what's documented online, or if we can't figure out how to actually get this working with the details necessary. Assuming we can get this online, and I'm hopeful we can, we need to turn our attention to the phone. Now the phone, I believe, is unencrypted SIP in this particular model, and we'll soon find out, because what I plan to do is once this is hopefully online, this will then start calling to say I need to register the phone. Now this gives us the great opportunity in what happened in the last video. It follows on from what I said in things happen for a reason. Now in that video I had planned to mess around with this and get it online. However, I wouldn't have been able to get this online, for the reason being is this is going to call a particular host name to register against for its SIP services. Now we've got our own DNS server in that hopefully this will then use. We'll be able to manipulate the DNS records that this is asking for to actually redirect them internally to an asterisk server that I've set up off camera, and hopefully be able to capture the details in the Wireshark capture to actually then put into asterisk and then get this to actually register and come online. And if it does, we will have a fully working handset and router, minus the TV side of stuff. We might look at that at another video, but hopefully we'll have a working phone and router as it should have been back in 2004 and 2005. And if we can get this working, then there are a few other units that I have seen on eBay that are of a slightly better condition. This one's quite worn, but I will grab another one. We'll set up another one of those and be able to phone between them, hopefully, in theory. So that is the plan for today's video. There are a number of hurdles to overcome, and I have no idea if this is actually going to work in the way I want it to. There are also some other complexities that I've seen online in that I believe the phones were auto-provisioned via TR069. Now, obviously, I have no idea if the SIP details are still in this device. So I think the best thing for us to do is power it up, connect to a VM image and probably Windows XP, because I'm assuming that this is going to be running a version of a web server that is going to cause issues with a modern browser. I could be wrong, but we'll get that online, we'll get logged into it, and we'll see what we need to do to get this working, and hopefully have a successful result at the end of it. Right, I'm going to jump on there and I'll see you on the screen capture. Right, I lied. I thought as we've actually got to plug this in, we'll have a quick run through on what the unit is. So on the front, apart from being really well worn on the top, which I assume someone's cleaned and rubbed off with a silk screen in the past, the actual unit itself is actually in really good condition. The tabs are still all in place for the fold down cover. In the back, in terms of ports, we have a broadband in, so we might as well plug in our ADSL line while we're at it. The phone port isn't actually a phone in, it's actually a line out. This is actually an ATA converter as well, so you could plug in your own analog phone if you didn't want to be using the DEX phone that came with it. We have two Ethernet ports. We're going to throw our Ethernet cable into port 1. We have USB-B and USB-A, which I believe you could use this as a modem as well, connect the device to it via USB, but also have the USB pass-through as well, so you didn't lose a port, which was quite nice. And then obviously we have our power. Now, I have been told this is all working, and the other thing I like is the cable management. This is so nice. It just folds through and comes out. Now, the wireless association, I believe, is if you are adding more DECT phones, because you can associate other DECT phones to this, or you could add a DECT phone to it at a later date. I also believe it doubles up as a WPS button as well. Now, flashing lights is not what I expected to see, but this could be booting, and that has just clicked internally, so I'm assuming that is normal and we don't have a faulty power supply or anything like that. But as I was saying, this was sold as working. Now you can get these units on eBay without the phone, and it's literally that's removed, you've got a blanking plate across it. Actually finding these with the DECT phones are actually paired as well, and I believe having the SIP account still in here, the seller was adamant that the SIP account is in here, because I did explain what I wanted to do with it, does make it quite rare, because I don't know, or I'm assuming all of these was configured via TR069, so obviously that is not going to work on this anymore, because it's well and truly since dead, and I don't know whether defaulting it removes the details either. And I'm pretty sure, from what I was told, all of this was bought together. So I'm assuming it is all in. Now, we have a flashing broadband light, which is great because it means it's training to the DSLAN. Now, I don't know if this is PPPoA or PPPoE. So we might actually have to change the configuration of the DSLAN, because I believe this port is set up for PPPoE. And I'm fairly sure this is probably going to be PPPoA, but that has jumped into sync. Let's jump onto the screen and see what we see coming through to radius, if anything, what we see on the brass, or whether we actually need to log into the MSAN and actually change the settings on this port for this to work. So, right, I will join you at the screen. Right, I have loaded every single tab I can possibly think of that we're going to need for all of this, and I've also loaded Winbox up down the bottom. Now, I haven't logged in to any of this. What you're seeing is first-hand experience as I'm seeing it as well. The only thing I have done is load our Windows XP VM image, because obviously that is connected to the hub, and we're potentially going to need Internet Explorer in order to connect to that version of the web server that's running on the hub, because I have no idea what firmware that's running, or if it's going to be compatible with a modern browser or anything like that. So it makes sense to use a period correct browser to potentially access that device. Now, speaking of the device, the hub has unfortunately rebooted since setting it all up and doing all of this without my intervention. So I get the sneaking suspicion that unfortunately it is on borrowed time. And if it is on borrowed time, I plan to make the most of it and hopefully get that reverse engineered and everything online. So should this fail after the video or during the video, at least we've actually got a good template or a complete blueprint in place to be able to use moving forward should I get another one of those devices off of eBay. Right, so first things first, are we even getting an IP address from this? That was not what I expected to load. IP config. Okay, so we are getting an IP address. Apparently the hub is on 1.254, so let's close this. Let's open up Internet Explorer and see what web browser we're presented with. And we're immediately told we're not connected to the internet, and that's fine. That's fully expected. Back in the day, you used to get these sort of landing pages if you didn't have any internet access, and it was check this, check that, phone this, phone that, etc. So that is completely normal and expected. It's also good because it does mean obviously the hub is working. Now, we are in sync, as we know. In fact, actually it's been connected longer than I thought it had been. It has been connected 35 minutes and it does seem happy at the moment, but that could very well change. Now, we've got a broadband username showing on the screen, which is great because the BT Home HUB is the generic username but is still in use today. So hopefully we can just pop those details into the radius and off we go. I have no idea if there's a password associated with this. We will have to find that out for a bit of trial and error. My telephones is the VoIP side of stuff. Now, if that number is still in use, I will grey it out. However, I get the sneaking suspicion it's probably dead unless it has been ported to a new service provider. Obviously, the Fusion service has long since been decommissioned. So, although you could port numbers back in the day, there were certain restrictions on certain ranges. So, it said, if it's dead, I'll grey it out. Although, actually thinking about it, I thought, we could make that our number, but the chances of me being able to get that number are very slim, so that'll probably end up being the extension number on the handset if we get this working, and then we'll get a different number and then we'll redirect that in asterisks to that particular number. So things to come. And then obviously we've got the home network, so there's no devices connected on the wireless as I'd expect, and the Ethernet device is going to be, well, that's going to be the MAC address of the VM host that we've got on here. So overall, everything seems working, and we actually seem to be able to get access to the browser, if I could speak properly. Let's just jump straight into advanced. I have no idea what's in here. Your BT Home HUB provides advanced features for complex network or specific applications. On most broadband access home networks, there should be no need to access this menu unless instructed to do so by a help desk or network administrator. Well, I am a network administrator, and for the purposes of this, I am a help desk agent as well. So let's go to advanced. Admin 1234. Nope. No password. Password. Of course it's password. Everything's password. Oh, I know back in the day that these did have their passwords randomized based on their serial number, so I was fully expecting to have to go and put that in, and I had pre-written it down, but obviously I don't need that. So, right. I don't think we're going to be able to do an awful lot in here. Interestingly, this looks like it's unlocked. That I wasn't expecting. Whether this actually saves if you change it is another matter, but it is a perfect insight as to what we need because we've got the username and there is no password. Now, the question is, can we see this on Radius? So let's go and jump on over here and log in. If I can spell, that is another reoccurring theme. Okay, well, we're not seeing any access reject messages, which basically means it's not getting to us to authenticate in the first place. So the next thing we need to do is actually go and look on the brass to see if we're seeing any inbound traffic coming in from the DSLAM. So let's jump on to Winbox, go into logs. Now, I would have expected there to have been a lot more in here if that was the case, but as it transpires, other than the startup stuff, and there is a radius accounting request, which could be it tidying something up from a previous message that never actually got done, or it setting up the radius stuff. I cannot see anything in here that would suggest that we're even seeing that request come in. So that does mean that this is on PPPoA and not PPPoE, which the DSLAM is currently configured for. So we now need to go and log into the DSLAM and change the port configuration to PPPoA. Right, so if we jump back down here and log in, one of these days I'll log into a device without issue. We need to go into ports, and we actually need to default port 1, because I don't think we can change the configuration. So let's leave, where is it plugged in? It's been plugged in port 1. Let's default port 1, and then we will go and set port 1 back up. Did that do anything? I'm going to assume so. We need to go into the not switch, back into the ports, back into ADSL. We need to enable port 1. We're going to put it back on our standard profile. There probably is an easier way to do this. I just haven't got round to working out what it is yet. Load port 1. And the only reason I load this over and over again is because there's that load bug where you have to load the profile twice. Change this, leave that as 1. Set this to VC Mux, apply that, which should save, which it has. That is in sync still. So, in theory, we should see radius requests now. And we do. Fantastic. Right, let's go and put this user in on the radius, because I'm being lazy, with which I can't actually copy that through, so I'm going to type it. So BT Home HUB at btbroadband.com. So let's go and create a new user. Let's see if I can get this correct first time this time. So we want BT Home HUB at btbroadband.com. Let's just double check that. BT Home HUB at btbroadband.com. We're going to leave the password blank. We've got it in the default group, and the only attribute that we actually need to add to this is the IP address in which this is going to use. So if I scroll to here, framed IP address, add attribute. Have we got anything in here we've used previously? Yes, we have. Let's use now I would be interested to try and set this up as DHCP at some point and actually see what happens with all of it, but for now that'll do. Okay, so we're going to have to put a password in. Let's just put in BT. BT was a common password. I have no idea if this is going to require it or not, but that is in. Now if we jump back to home, we're seeing the access reject request. Now I imagine that this is all going to be in here for the access reject request, which is probably still going to fail because we've got password on that, and obviously we don't in the BT hub, which we don't. Question is, if we put a password in here, will it actually save? Now I expect it to come online, it's just whether all of this actually retains after a reboot. I'd like to try and set this up without the password. I'll actually have to do a bit of digging to see if we can add a radius user in there without any authentication details for the password. But that has connected. Yes, we've got sent reply. I'm looking for the framed IP address, which I can't see for looking. I still can't see for looking. Or let's just jump back to here and see what's happening. We have an access accept, so hopefully that should be online. Let's jump back to here. Interesting, it says connection cannot be established. Is that just because, well, it's still saying it's not connected. So let's ask it to reconnect. Receives a counting response. Could not determine remote address using... Okay, what is all of this about? Receive reply. Could not determine request. Could not determine remote address using 10... Okay, so it couldn't determine, connected, and then it hung up. Why did it hang up? Could not determine address. Have I missed something on that user? Given my track record, I wouldn't be entirely surprised about that. Edit user, attributes. Did I not add it? Again, I will probably figure that out in editing when I realise I haven't. Just going to add a framed IP address. I don't know what I set this to before, but I'll set that there. Apply. Okay, so do we have the attributes in here? I was in the wrong tab, but I would have expected 2 in here if that was the case. Let's just jump back to here. That was potentially why we weren't seeing the framed IP address, is because I didn't actually have it set. Has this connected? Nope. Let's ask it to connect. Let's see what's going on here. Are we going to do anything? That seems to be taking an absolute age to do anything. That doesn't say it's connected. It would help if I set the time and date on this properly, wouldn't it? Okay, let's leave that on that line. Let's get that to connect. So we've got a PPPoE connection established. It is connecting. Have we got a framed IP address in here? I can't see it, although it's not saying that it's disconnected this time. Well, apparently it's still connected. Your broadband line is connected. Can we actually see with what? What is in internet? Well, it's picked up 20.222 and 20. Well, I configured the radius. I've configured it wrong again. That should be 30. That's why it didn't stand out in the records that were going back and forth, actually, because everything on 20 is the lab network. So it is there, it's just I wasn't expecting it. Obviously all of this is on .20 as well, so if I'd looked at the request properly I would have seen it. But that does mean if I disconnect, this thing takes forever at times and connect. That should come online. And in theory we should be able to do what we normally do, ping out and all that good stuff. So right, that is online. Interestingly, that's not pulled the secondary DNS, which I remember adding the secondary DNS as an attribute just so everything was there. It doesn't really matter too much, but I'm interested to find out why that's not there. And we can ping Google. So that is all working. So step 1, we have a working and connected hub, which is fantastic. Obviously the next thing we need to do is get our telephony side of stuff working, and that I have very little knowledge about in terms of this particular setup and how this works. And actually clicking on that telephony side of stuff, there is no option other than to delete that particular number, and obviously we don't want to do that. So the next thing is going to be actually Wiresharking the traffic that is coming out from port 10. So we're going to grab absolutely everything, which means we're going to see all the PPP and all the information going back and forth on that after it connects. So we should be able to filter it out a little bit. I have a rough idea as to where this is being pointed to based on some research I've done, and I believe there is a proxy and a registration server. I'm hoping we can combine them both together in order to get this to work, but I do have a rough idea of what I'm looking for from a DNS record point of view, and if they are what they are supposed to be, then obviously we can rewrite that. Right, now my concern is that password going to stay in here after we reboot it? It's not the end of the world if we have to put it back in. If it stays, fine. If it doesn't, I need to work out how we can sort that out from a Radius point of view to add a user without a password, and is that even possible in the current version of Dalal Radius and also Free Radius that's running in the background. So I am going to go and get everything plugged in so we can go on Wireshark, and then I'm going to show you how I set that up from a MikroTik point of view and also the Wireshark software, because we're actually going to be using a streaming capture service on this. Normally you would do it by physically connecting cables, port mirroring and do it like that, but the MikroTik offers the ability to do a streaming type of setup, and I've never done that before, so why not just add to the complication and potential issues that can go wrong. So we're going to do that. So right, I will be back in a moment. Right, I am back, and a few things have happened since all of this. I have rebooted the hub. The hub has come back online, and it's saved the password that we put in it earlier, which is a good thing. Whether or not that would be the case if this was able to talk to its TR069 server and then BT overwrite it or not, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously the TR069 platform for this no longer exists, so I don't actually know whether that would have been the case during the day or whether you could actually change the details in this to some degree at that point. But either way, to our benefit, it is still connected using those details. Now I have had a look at Free Radius and Dalal Radius about accepting a user without any password, and it does seem to be possible making some changes to some config files, the database and Dalal's front end in order to be able to do that. So that is certainly a possibility moving forward, but at the minute we don't need it because it is working as is. Now speaking of working as is, what we need to do is obviously get the phones working. Now I have put some batteries into that, and the screen is extremely faint and very well used, but it does seem to be working and is paired to the unit. So what we now need to do is capture the traffic that is coming out of the ADSL side of that unit, trying to talk back home to its SIP server. So we're going to Wireshark everything coming out from the DSLAM side, which we're in a fortunate position to be able to do because obviously we've got the end-to-end connectivity. Obviously if this was in a house connected online, you wouldn't be able to capture the traffic going out over the ADSL side. You'd have to try and brute force the details from the actual device itself. So the Wireshark has been around for decades and has evolved massively over that time. It is almost the must-have piece of software for anyone diagnosing network issues, messing around with the lab or reverse engineering stuff that we're planning to do today. Now traditionally with Wireshark, you'd set it up to capture an interface on the local device, and that interface would be connected to your switch, and typically on your switch you'd be doing port mirroring, so all the data that's going across would then appear on the screen on your desk. Now I've never used the UDP listener remote capture before, and the MikroTiks have the ability to support the sniffer protocol, the streaming sniffer protocol, which is what this can connect to. So I thought, why not actually mess around with that as well today and just add more complication into all of this. What else could possibly go wrong? But it gave a really good look into actually me messing around with it as well. So typically when you install Wireshark, you've got the option to add additional components into it, one of which is the UDP listener remote capture. Once that's installed, it will appear in your capture device list as an interface in which you can edit. If you go into it, then you're presented with this, the port it's going to listen on, as well as the payload type. Now typically it's set to data. Now if you capture the stuff that's coming through on here, it will literally mirror what's coming from the MikroTik, but we want to be able to have it in a format in which we can read. So for that, we are going to change this to I think it was TZSP, which basically stands for Tasman Sniffer Protocol. It is what has been suggested online. I've never used this before, but basically it means that the data displayed on the screen will very much emulate or replicate what we'd normally see for a typical traffic capture. So that we've got in on that, and now we need to go and set up the MikroTik to send its data to this, and hopefully we should start to see it all appear on the screen. So if we enable capturing for that, jump over to the MikroTik. If we go into Tools and Packet Sniffer, all of this is going to stay standard. We're going to enable streaming. We're going to point it to the laptop that I'm currently using, which is on .56, and we're going to set a filter, and we want, well, interestingly, there's the session that's come up, which I wasn't expecting in that list, so we can actually select the session that's coming across, or I was going to select Ethernet 10, which is where the DSLAM's connected into. So let's go for broke and select that particular PPP session as well. And then once that's selected and okay, or started even, we should, in Wireshark, see absolutely nothing. Why are we seeing absolutely nothing? Obviously I have set up the firewall for this, because you can see Windows Defender it's running. Okay, it's just the fact that it's taking time to come through. I was expecting to see all the PPP payload data coming back and forth, but thinking about it, we're not capturing Ethernet 10. In fact, if I go and set that to, or if I stop this, set that to Ethernet 10, apply it and start it, you would also see exactly the same. Again, I was expecting to see all the PPP, oh, in fact, actually, no, that is echo request information. I could be talking complete and utter bollocks. I don't really know. But we're seeing potentially a lot more. In fact, actually, we are seeing the PPP stuff. Yes, we are. It's there. I just didn't actually read the protocol type. So, yes, we're seeing the echo responses go back and forth to actually make sure the router is still at the end of it. Because obviously, if that goes offline, these will start failing. And then, of course, it would disconnect the PPP session. So that is everything that we are seeing, which we're seeing through port 10. Now I'm going to leave it as port 10 just to make sure we are capturing absolutely everything. Now we need to get the hub to try and request registration for the IP side of stuff. Now I have no idea if we can manually trigger that or if it's anything to do with anything that's going on here. Interestingly, there is a cch-vpn.btopenzone.net. Did this create a VPN connection and then set up for the phones? I don't know. All of this is new to me. Right, I think the best thing to try and do, oh actually, there we are. Speaking of which, I was about to say best thing to do is to actually restart this. There is, it's requesting a sip.btsip.bt.net, which ties in with the DNS record that I had seen online that this should be looking for. So, if we jump onto our DNS server and create that zone and point it to our asterisk server, our asterisk server should then start responding to say yay, no, and this, that, and the other. And we should then start to see some SIP information coming back and forth, assuming it is all in plain text and we can actually mess around with it. So let's go and jump onto the DNS server and create that zone and point it to the free PBX server we've got set up. Let's log into here, and this is one of the beautiful things about having the DNS. And I said right at the start, things happen for a reason. If we had not had this not turn up and we hadn't gone down this path, then we wouldn't be able to do this right now because we wouldn't have the DNS server set up in order to do this. So let's create that zone, and we're going to create a master zone. We might as well, let's set that up for that, and then we can go through and add additional host names if we need to. Let's set this up to no reply at the uplink port.co.uk. Everything else we're going to leave as default. We don't want anything for template forward. Sorry, I was reading the forward zones at the top and the words just didn't come out properly. So let's create that. So we should be able to go into addresses, and we should, in theory, I'm about to do this, SIP And we need to remember what our asterisk server is on, and that is something you guys don't know because I set it up off camera and I cannot remember myself what I set it up as. So let's go and jump onto that now. Okay, so it's up on 20.230. So 192.168.20.230. We might as well create a reverse record for it as well. Let's create that. Let's apply the zone. Let's jump back to the zone list, and then that should appear here. And if we go into edit zones, then we should have BT SIP.bt.net, which is pointing to that. So if we actually ping that from a Windows host, that should respond. Let's move that out of the way. Windows XP. Ping, nope. Ping SIP.bt SIP.bt.net. And there we go. The beauty of having a local DNS server. So, I have no idea what time that was all about. Either way. Right, so ignoring all of that, and I have to apologise, I got distracted because the door went and about half an hour, if not longer, has passed. But hopefully it's been enough time for the hub to actually attempt to register and actually be in here somewhere. Now we're going to find out really quickly from this whether or not we've actually got anything unencrypted or whether this is all hashed. I get the sneaking suspicion deep down that this is actually going to be a hashed password. The problem I've got is all the documents and forum posts and user discussions on this are over 20 years old, and not all of them are complete or accurate. So I am literally going on what has been said. Now, it being hashed would make perfect sense. Having said that, I'm hopeful that it's not. But having said that again, I can't even see this attempting to register, and it might just actually be easier if we search for SIP as a protocol and actually see what comes back. Okay, well, it has attempted to register, which is a good thing. Now, obviously, it's come back with unauthorized messages, which is what we'd expect. Now, the registration authentication is going to be in the second SIP message, so we might as well have a look at the last and latest one that's gone through. Now, it's going to be in SIP, and it's going to be a message header, and it's, no, we are hashed. We are very, very much hashed. That is a big problem potentially. Now, it is possible to decrypt hashes. However, that will depend on how long the password is and the power of the computer you're actually doing it on. Now, all of this goes way above my head. I've never done anything like that before. So I'm going to have to do a bit of research. The other option we can try and do is get the password out of the hub itself. But again, I've never done that. So I'm going to have to do a bit of digging online to see if that's even possible. We could look at setting up asterisks to ignore the password that's coming in on the client, but I don't even know if that's possible. We are running quite a modern version of asterisks or FreePBX, so there's potentially something in there that is designed to stop me doing exactly what I want to do with it. So at the minute, I'm at a bit of a dead end until I can work out a way forward with this. So I'm going to go and have to do some research. Now, I'm not giving up with that or this. I mean, we've come this far, and it'd be really disappointing to be, well, for my next update to be we're dead in the water. Given how far we've come with this, I want to really get this done and online. I think it'd be something really cool to actually have working. I think it'd be really cool to take some calls on this, maybe even from you guys. But obviously we need to get it working first. So I think I'm going to call it a day because I've been at this for a little while in terms of everything. I'm going to go and do some research tonight, and hopefully when I come back I've actually got some good news, or at least a direction in which we can take. So I will see you shortly. Right, so a really quick update. The time on that clock is actually correct. It is 11:45 on Thursday at night. It is also a lot darker in here because I don't have all the studio lights on blinding me, and everyone else can actually see what I'm doing in here. So, progress, little bit has been made. Now, after I finished on the last clip, I started doing a load of research into decrypting password hashes in MD5, and I came across Hashcat, which by its own description is apparently the fastest hashing tool, dehashing tool, whatever you want to call it, around. Now, getting this to work has been a massive learning curve, and all the information that this is currently running on is what we've got out of the Wireshark capture and basically put together in a format that this needs into a particular string, which this is currently running against that file with certain parameters. There are a multitude of assumptions with all of this. Number one, I don't know what the password length is, so I've got this set anywhere between 4 and 10. It could be longer. I also read that the increments actually go up in 2s, not 1s. So if the password is 9 characters long, there is potential that this is not going to find it. Also, the type of password, is it alphanumerical or is it just numbers and letters, or is it numbers, letters, capitals, special characters? I don't know. I don't believe there's any special characters involved because I don't believe BT were using special characters at this particular time. The chances of us actually getting the password on this are slim to none. This has been running on this particular hash mode or target, whatever you want to call it, for 2.5 hours. It has been working through others prior to this, and obviously we are still no further forward with it, and all of this is new to me, and this might not even be the best approach. But as I say all the time, it is literally about learning, messing around and experimenting, and if this doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not the end of the world. I would love it to, but I don't think it is going to be that quick. On that note, we have got other things that we can do. So while all that has been running, I have actually been messing around in the background with Asterisk, trying to force Asterisk to ignore the password authentication side of stuff, or at least not care about it so much. We have made progress, and if I actually jump back through signaling messaging, now ignore all of this. I have no idea why this has come in. It's actually been generated from FreePBX going to that source or that destination address. I don't know why. I'm too tired to care about it at the minute. And just for reference, FreePBX is not accessible from the public internet. It's actually behind 2 layers of NAT in the network on the lab side. So it shouldn't be talking out at all. So, but I'm getting distracted. The initial messages that we were having come back were 2 unauthorized messages. We are now getting forbidden messages come back. Now, diving through the logs within Asterisk, it's actually reporting a username mismatch. Now, I'm suspecting that's probably because of the domain part of the username that's actually sending as well. So I need to narrow down on setting or getting that in place, and whether that's even possible to register against that particular domain in Asterisk, or whether it is something completely different. Now, if we completely foul with Asterisk, there are other options for us to look at. I do have quite a bit of experience with SIPwise and NGCP, and that is certainly an option, and that actually runs on the back of Cameleo, or however you pronounce it. Looking through the documentation, this you can disable or put into debug users to disable password checking and various other authentication things, and it is a supported debug method on this. The problem is SIPwise sitting on top of this has the potential to cause issues with SIPwise itself. So I'm looking at installing this separately on Debian, as it happens, because this does need Debian to run, or at least one of the supported operating systems. So we've got our Debian default image we can just spin up for it. I can get this installed, and then it'll be another learning experience to get this in, but potentially this may be the answer to all of our problems. Now, this has been a massive journey from start to finish. I didn't realize this was going to be so involved, and I hope at the end of it that green light, the only one that's not lit on that box at the minute, actually lights, and we can actually use the phone in some degree, even if it is only to phone voicemail or to mess around locally. But that would be massive progress, and I would be incredibly happy at that stage. We can obviously develop on it from that point. However, if this does not work, it is not the end of the world. As I say with all of these projects and messing around, it is about the experience and learning and developing new skills and all of that that actually makes this worthwhile. And that is certainly the case. I knew picking this up that it was not going to be as simple as I had hoped it was going to be. And I'm kind of glad it's not, because it is making an interesting video. It's diving into bits that potentially we wouldn't necessarily see, and it's pushing me to the absolute limit in trying to work this damn thing out. I hope I can, but at the end of the day, if I can't, it's not the end of the world. Right, as it is now almost 11 o'clock, I am going to go to bed, and I will see you back here at some point in the future, hopefully with some progress. So I will see you shortly. I lied. I forgot to mention, getting the details from the hub is going to be nigh on impossible. It turns out that the hub was TR069 provision for everything, and reading back through a few forum posts, BT actually had a specific website that you could log into and set up BT Broadband Talk, which once you saved it and added it to your account, would actually then get sent and provisioned to the hub. Now you could, annoyingly, you can't now obviously because it's no longer there, but you could log in and you could actually download your SIP details at the time to actually be able to use this with third-party services. That is a stark change from everything now, because BT and their current digital voice products will not let anyone have anything. So this is certainly a unique situation back in the day. But yeah, that's how all that worked. That's why I can't get the details. So obviously they're stored in the hub, but I have no clue on actually getting any of that from the hub directly. Telnet's all disabled. SSH is disabled. Telnet used to be a way that you could get into it, but they patched that because they thought it was going to be an exploit because people were messing around with it. So I believe that's running the version of the firmware that doesn't have that either. So I think that's dead in the water unless I can dismantle it and try and see if there's some programming headers on it. But even then, that is massively over my head as well. So I think I'm going to have to can that idea of actually trying to extract it from the hub. I did read somewhere that you could flash version 1 and version 5 as well, but I've not come across any more posts on that, and some people have completely been the opposite to that, saying that you can't do anything with them. So I don't know, and it's the problem I mentioned earlier. They are so old. They were very undocumented because of the era in which they came up, unlike everything now. But there's so little information on them that I think physically attacking the hub is just not going to be worthwhile. So right, now I'm going to bed. Now I've remembered everything I need to say. I will see you in the next bit. Right, update time. And as you can tell from the tone in my voice, we have not got very far, unfortunately. Now, assuming I put the last set of clips in, which was me recording very late at night, I was extremely tired, as you can tell, and I was also glossing over things which are actually quite critical. Number one, in the Wireshark capture, there was that odd IP address, and it turns out I hadn't spotted it at the time, but the hub has actually changed its registration domain to bt.com and not bt.net. Now, I thought I was going mad and I'd missed this at the start, so I've gone back through my footage and checked, and it was bt.net. So at some point between then and now, the hub has swapped its DNS names for its resolution to connect to the SIP server. So that was one issue. So all the DNS records were updated, everything started coming through, and I also added that IP space into the lab network as well, just to make sure that there wasn't anything else going on in the background. Obviously, we were still hitting unauthorized messages through all of it. Now, I'd also left Hashcat running on my PC with the hope that maybe it would do something. It didn't, partly because Windows Update decided to restart my machine during the night and I lost all progress. Not that we were getting anywhere with it anyway, and I've also since learned that BT Talk passwords were typically 18 characters long, and looking at the map as to how long it would take to crack that type of password on the hardware that I've got, or even modern day hardware, would potentially take many, many, many lifetimes. So it completely drew a line underneath that particular route. So I decided to actually change gear and focus actually on the physical PBXs and server side of stuff to see if we could override the authentication process. So I have tried a multitude of different PBXs and soft switches, and I am still running into the same issue. So ignoring all the Camelio stuff that is on screen, and especially the code that's in there, because this was a last ditch attempt for me to try and get this work. This may be version 20 of a file, and I've done bits online through forums, we've done ChatGPT, we've done other AIs. They've all come up with their own versions of concept of what should go into these files, and none of them have worked. We still either run into SIP unauthorized messages, or in this case, invalid 2 URL detection because there is something wrong with that. I have pretty much drawn a line under all of this as well. Now, I have used SIPwise, which typically sits on top of this as well, slightly different versions in it. I'm quite familiar with SIPwise, but ultimately all this still sits on the back end of Comalio. And again, it's just not accepting any of the registration attempts. This VoIP actually has the wrong password in it, which is why it's erroring, because trying to do it on the hub only registers once every 10 minutes unless you physically restart it or pull the DSL cable out, and just waiting for that to happen each time just got annoying. So we jumped onto a client to actually force the registration through, and yeah, that hasn't worked. But I have tried other versions of software. So I've tried FreePBX and an old version of Trixbox, which of course all rely on asterisks. However, despite putting various different bits in different files, we were still running into issues. And the CHAN SIP driver, from what I've read, has specifically got bits in it to prevent exactly what I'm trying to do. And the only way to get around that would be to edit the CHAN SIP and remove all of the authentication side of stuff, recompile it, and then reinstall effectively asterisks on the back end. So, but that goes way above my head. I don't have any experience of doing that. Well, I have got experience with compiling files, actually stripping out all the bits I don't need and actually ending up with a working file that I can recompile and actually have a working system at the end of it, is a completely different story. So that unfortunately hasn't happened. So I am running out of options, and I hadn't realized this was going to be so difficult. I'm completely happy I've attempted it because it has been fun despite the frustration. I haven't given up yet. There is still one last thing I've got to try, and that is this GitHub repository here. Did I just say GitHub? GitHub. You can tell it's been a long day as well. But this apparently accepts, well, it doesn't have a registration process and will also reply with a 200 OK message. So this is a last ditch attempt. Now, from what I've read online, this isn't particularly stable. Not that it needs to be, because it is literally going to be to get this on. And to be honest, at this moment in time, I would settle just for the phone light going green on this. Even if I can't do anything with it, I would happily take that as a win. So that is what I'm going to install next. Now, it runs on a Windows 10 install from what I've seen. So I'm going to download all the source. I'm going to compile it. I'm going to get it installed, and we're going to run it. I believe it all runs from this, effectively the command line. So we'll see how that goes. This is my last ditch attempt at trying to get that, well, to get this to work really. And I'd imagine there's probably a load of you out there that are fully capable of doing this, and if you are and I've missed something, or getting around this, drop a comment below, because I would love to get this online. As I said, I am not an expert when it comes to any of this. I'll happily give it a go and mess around, and as you well know, I record all my mistakes and failures, and that is exactly what this is about. So I'm going to go and get this downloaded, compiled and installed, and hopefully maybe get that registered. I don't know. Right, I'll be back in a bit. Okay, we have made progress. That SIP server is compiled and running. That in itself was fun and games, because this virtual machine doesn't have enough storage to be able to install Virtual Studio to be able to go and compile it all. So I've had to do it on a separate machine and push it all over, and also install a load of other DLL files in the background that this needed. But this has got Zoipa connected. Now, this has got random details in it, and it has accepted the authentication. The hub, as far as I'm aware, hasn't attempted to register yet. I don't actually know where it's going to try and register. I've seen a load of requests in here from that 198 address, so we may have to tweak and kick a few things. And it's weird, I've seen that use that address and then restart it a couple of times and it started using the other one. So I don't entirely know, but we have made progress. So I'm going to kick the hub, and I'm going to have you guys ready to see if it comes online. And that little application does enable you to actually make calls locally between handsets. It's got no ability to connect anything externally as far as I can see, but even if I can get that to actually connect, and yeah, we might not be able to use it for an external call, but I can get another client connected and we can make an internal call, that would be fantastic. And potentially even to hear that ring for the first time, I might be getting ahead of myself given the fact it's taken me literally 3 days of continuous back and forth just to get to this point. But as you can tell, I'm excited. So I'm going to kick the hub. We're going to see if it registers. Right, I have pulled the RJ11 cable out of the hub. The hub is currently resyncing. Normally when it resyncs, it will then try and send its SIP request out. Wireshark is running. I honestly have no idea what is going to happen. I get the sneaking suspicion it's going to try and register with that 198 address again, and I don't know where that's coming from because it's not in the DNS server, and all the local lookups correctly point to 20.222, which is what the the IP address I've been using for the PBX testing. So I'm a little bit perplexed as to where that's coming from, unless it's something actually in the hub itself. Maybe it knows what I'm trying to do. I honestly haven't got a clue. Now, if it does use the 198 address, then we might have to physically power cycle it. It's logged in. What is all this? Oh, of course, I've got the machine. Yeah, it's trying to register using that 198 address again, which of course isn't going to work. The only thing I can do to get around that on the short term is actually physically put that IP on that machine. I did say that I have got it set up, so I could just make life easy for myself, I guess. But I'm going to do that now, and then we'll jump back. Right, that is up on that IP address. It is listening. Wireshark is sat in the background. I'm going to set that camera recording again and hopefully see that bloody green light go green. That's all I care at this moment in time. Right, give me 1 minute. I really have no idea what to expect. Again, I don't know where it's getting that 198 address from. It is all properly in bind. If I ping that locally from all devices that are using that DNS server, it's all responding with the 198 address. So I will do a bit more digging. You know what it's like when you kind of just get tunnel vision on one particular thing, and it's probably something simple I've missed. So if this works, I will go absolutely mad. Well, hub's logged in. There's a registration request. Okay, server's apparently not responding. 198.181.3. 198.1.8.3. Well, clearly there's some sort of routing issue going on between all of this and the lab network. So, right, then we go and work out what's going with this, and then I'll come back. Right, firewall rules further upstream. I've kicked it. It is rebooting. I can see that IP address from everywhere on the network. Whether that can still see it or not, I don't know. It's frustrating that it is pointing to that IP address because I've just gone through bind once again with a fine tooth comb and cannot see it anywhere. So I can only imagine potentially it is a local record that is actually physically built into that router, maybe as a IP address of last resort. I don't know. I don't know where the IP subnet originally came from. We'll see. Right, discovery is coming up. That has authenticated. It's trying to register, but it's just not responding. And all the routes are in place for all of this. This would be a lot easier if it was all on the same bloody subnet. Right, I need to do some digging to find out what is going on. Update. Quite literally, I rebooted the auto provisioning machine that the SIP server is sitting on, because despite me reverting the network configuration back to what it should be, because I found an issue with the DNS records after all, the machine would ping locally but wouldn't ping out across the internet, and everything else is working. So I decided to restart the Windows 10 machine. It's probably the worst thing I could have done because it's now sat there preparing for an update. On other news, the hub, after it rebooted, has also failed to pick up, or in fact, it didn't even attempt to register for SIP on that particular time. So I don't know what's happening with that. So we seem to have taken one step forward and 2 steps backward, but hopefully everything is there now, and we just need to align it all, and hopefully we'll get our green phone light at some point. But in fact, that looks like it has just come back up, so we'll see if that is now attempting to register. It's still got the wrong DNS record, where in fact that's going to a different IP address now. It's going to .4 instead of .3. Don't get where this has come from. The only thing I can think of is this has been able to talk online and has received some form of update and is basically nulled all the SIP settings in that device, because I don't know where it's got that from. That physically does not exist. That record is not there. In fact, I don't actually know if I'm logged into anything that will show me it. Move this out that way. Ping btsip.bt.com. It is there. It is at the correct address, and yet that is going elsewhere. I don't know. And even the actual zone above it as well is all there. So I don't know. And annoyingly, I can't get those 198 addresses to route properly on that way. It's not talking to those 198 addresses either. So, and the 198 addressing is all around the network, and I've proved that because I've got VoIP to work. So, honestly, if it's not one thing, it's another thing at a minute. I'm going to keep battling on. It is getting late, as always, but progress, kind of. Right, be back in a bit. Okay, so I've actually been going over the Wireshark capture while Windows decides to do its update, and I have spotted something. It is looking up sip.btsip.bt.net, which is originally what it was doing. And of course, I then pulled those records once I was seeing the BT lookups. I get the sneaking suspicion that it's looking for this, it can't find it, so it's defaulting to an internal value to then try and connect. So I bet if we put those back in, it is going to connect. Now, stupidly, I said I only took them out because I was seeing the .com ones, but I hadn't actually checked the SIP trace to see whether they were being called beforehand, and it's obviously just some failover mechanism. So, lesson learned. Let's go and put them back in and see what happens. I feel that every single time I come on to give an update, we make a little bit of progress, and then I have to wait for something. I've fixed the DNS records. The BT.net one is in there, or the A records are in there for it now, and they are actually pointing to where they should be, which is .222, which is, in this case, the Windows server, which is going to be acting as the PBX. All the .com ones are coming back as well, so my only assumption is when it can't find BT.net, it then defaults to an IP address that it's got internally on the hub. That 198 address is nowhere to be found, and I actually scrolled back through a load of captures I had from previous, and all the lookups that this is done on all the host names have all failed. So this hasn't gone out and got an update and disabled anything like I potentially thought might have happened. It literally looks like it's just falling back to an internal DNS record, and maybe that 198 address was some testing network in BT back in the day. So I have no idea. All I do know is Windows Update happens at the most inconvenient of times because we are still waiting for that to complete. And I've never been so tense in all my life, because once this completes, I can get back in, start the server, and hopefully that bloody thing will register. And as I said, we'll see the green light come on it. And I will be able to hopefully make a call from that to Zoiper that is currently running on my desktop machine. That is all I want from this, and then we can draw this to a close, and then I can go over how much of just a mountain this was to climb. I knew about this software before I started, but I didn't want to go down this easy route. I wanted to try and get it working with the other things, but That being said, I haven't even got it working with the SIP server yet, so let's not curse anything. Ooh, 11%. Right. I imagine this is going to take a while. This VM host is not the most powerful of VM hosts, and this looks like it's doing a complete version update on Windows 10. Also, everyone on the housing estate seems to be coming home because all I can hear is cars in the background, so I'm going to go before you can hear anything else. Right, I will come back when this is completed and hopefully able to register. Right, that didn't take too long. It's not too late. It did take about 45 minutes, but it is back, it is up, it's running, it's listening, it's on the correct lab network IP address. We're going to get Zoiper to hopefully register. Now I've changed this up 1 digit as well. Why is that now timing out? Let's go into the correct IP address. Although, did I do the other one? Apparently so. Right, so that is back up and running after a bit of messing around with the DNS records because Zoiper was caching them for some silly reason. That is back online and it's with 502 instead of 501. I have a new Wireshark capture running. That has literally, I thought was in sync, was about to start PPP. It looks like it now. I will drop that overlay on the screen and hopefully this registers. I'll take the bloody light just going green as I said. Right, that has come up online from PPP's point of view. Yes, we've got a 200 OK register message. Have we got... Go away. Yes, we've got a new client online. And it's like, all right, yes, the light's green. The light's freaking green. Oh, you don't know how happy I am to see that. Can I phone it? That is the next question. I've got the number ready. It's ringing for the first time in, I don't know, 15 years. It's actually ringing. It's got the incoming caller ID. Let's answer it. Hello? Well, I can't hear anything, but then again, I don't have anything attached on the other end from my machine. Well, I do have my headset, but I can't hear anything. That is phenomenal, the fact that it actually rings. Hello? No, I have to configure Zoiper for the audio settings, but it actually rings, which is absolutely fantastic. I'll take that at the minute as an absolute win. That is flashing away as if it's actually doing something. It has been days in the making to get that to work, and apparently I have 22 missed calls. This is all just updated as well from everyone. So the last time this was used was on the 28th of the 10th. Sorry. What year? Let's go into the... Yeah. 2010 is the last time that this was used at 10:40 in the morning. So 15 years ago. This has not registered or worked in over 15 years. The hub's actually just restarted as well. I think that is a sign. I am going to take that as a win. I'm going to wait for that to come up. I'm going to do a bit more messing around and hopefully get some audio running back and forth. But I will take just the phone logo going green. That is absolutely awesome. I'm really happy. Right, 3 days well spent. I will come back to you when that's booted back up and hopefully we can make a two-way audio call. Right, update. First update, nice new OBS scene and also multiple OBS scenes so I can actually toggle back and forth between things as we're moving forward with all of this. So hopefully be able to explain myself and also give you guys a better view of what's going on. Now, speaking of what's going on, in the last clip, I thought that VoIP was simply not working from an audio perspective because it had the wrong audio device selected. However, what I hadn't realised at the time, and looking back at that particular clip, was VoIP was stuck ringing, and also it had lost its registration to the SIP server in the background because there was a little spinning logo next to the account that was actually in VoIP. The hub, unbeknownst to me, had crashed, and the actual DECT phone was saying it was in call. Now, initially, I thought this was a one-off. I restarted absolutely everything, expecting it to work the next time, and it didn't. It did exactly the same thing, with the exception of the hub not crashing this time. So this led me to wonder what on earth was going on, and I registered a couple of new SIP phones on the SIP server. I registered a SIP device on my laptop, on my mobile, and also a physical Yealink W54, I think it was, on the system, and started making calls between all of them on the same 20 network as that SIP server. However, I got very mixed results on that as well. I was seeing registration issues where a phone would register and then literally seconds later drop off registration and not re-register until the extension number was changed. I also saw issues where there was no audio, which typically you would attribute to a firewall, but there are no firewalls running on this side of stuff. And also the call would then work perfectly a few calls later and then not work at all later. I was having issues actually physically answering calls. I would actually answer it and it would get stuck saying answering. I then lose registration to the SIP server. Overall, something wasn't right. Now, I came across this SIP server in a forum post from over a year ago where a particular individual was already suggesting that they were having stability issues with it themselves in terms of registration, calling issues, and also phones still ringing even after the calling event had ended. Now, I don't attribute everything to what was going on solely with the SIP server. The hub itself is obviously running a very old version of the SIP stack, so there's a possibility that there is a compatibility issue between that. And I have not been able to make a successful call at all with the hub. Every single time I call it or receive a call from it, I see a request terminated message come in on the actual server side, and I have no idea why that is actually coming through. Obviously, I've got logs from the phone. I've also got the Wireshark captures, but they only show me so much of the picture. I'd ideally like to look at the server to see what it's doing and getting logs from that. However, that server is extremely simplistic in terms of what it can do, and there's no logging built into it. Now, the source files for that SIP server are available on GitHub. So if there is a very talented individual out there that wants to actually go and have a look at it to see whether A, they can improve on it, or B, just add logging to it for me, I would be really grateful. Also, I might reach out to the developer as well to see if there's something we can do to try and get it in a more stable state, at least work with the hub, because I would love to actually make and receive a call on this, at least internally. Now, I said at the very least I'd love to see the light lit on it, and the light is lit, but I'm now pushing that forward more. I actually want to make and receive a call on this. Now, my end goal is to get this registered on the PSTN network so I can take calls from you guys. I think that would be absolutely amazing, but at the minute I'm currently stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place. Now, I've tried the analog phone on the hub as well, and it does exactly the same thing. Now, I have set up my phone to give you a quick example of what goes on, but very much if I phone the Yealink handset from here, you will literally see the Yealink flash up straight away with missed call. So if I do that now, you will see very quickly as well on Wireshark, it comes up saying cancel. Obviously the log file isn't going to do anything, but straight away on the phone itself, it comes up saying missed call. So something is triggering that event, and I cannot see where that is being generated from. Having Wireshark running from this side doesn't show why it's going. It shows it going into the server, and then obviously this capture shows a cancel coming from the server. So I need to understand why that cancel message is coming through. Now, one running theory I've got is the hub is locked down to particular IP addresses from a media point of view for the SIP side of stuff. That would make sense. Now, even back then, obviously BT were running ACLs, and it's the only logical thing I could think of at this stage as to why that is immediately disconnecting a call. Maybe it was some security bit built into it, I don't know. Now, I thought it was potentially codec related, and I have changed every single codec possible under all the soft phones and the hard phones to see if that solved the issue, because on this, when you make a call, it actually comes up saying hi, which I assume means high quality or HD or some high band codec, wideband even. I don't honestly know at this particular point in time. All I know is I am pretty much stuck. Now, I have tried other things as well with this. I've tried registering my mobile phone on the Wi-Fi to the SIP server along with the A-Link handset as well. And that in itself was not simple, despite the BT Home Hub being specifically told to allow all outbound firewall requests and specifically being disabled. Those phones would not register to an external SIP server unless I specifically changed their device type in the hub to phone. Everything was being rejected on the firewall. So I don't entirely not fault the hub on this. Trying to make calls locally between those devices also had a very much of a mixed bag in terms of what I was experiencing, and also exactly the same as what I was experiencing on the 20 network with the local phones. Handsets losing their registration, audio only occasionally going through, not being able to answer calls. It was exactly the same. So it's not as if it's network related or anything like that. I get the sneaking suspicion most of the issues are because of that particular SIP server, but as said, there is definitely something else going on the hub as well. Now, there are CVE exploits for the hub, and I have gone through some of them, one of which includes a tech user that apparently BT used to use back in the day, which gives a higher elevated access that enables you to download the backup for that particular device, which includes the username and password for the SIP, which would be great because then I could actually register this to a SIP server and get a bit more logging out of it to see if what I think is going on with the IP address is correct, but also if it's something completely different. However, all of that is very much above my head. And if one of you guys have got some experience with getting into these, let me know and we'll see if we can get you into it to actually exploit that information out of it, because all of this goes way above my head. As I've said, typically I make packets go from one side of a network to the other, and not always very successfully, but that is typically what I try and do these days. So yeah, all of this is massively different from what I'm normally doing, and I want to get this to work. Now, in my own stupid way, I thought a way around this would actually be to buy another BT hub, get them registered, and maybe they then might talk to each other if they're allowed to do a point-to-point call. If they are expecting a particular server address, then this is still not going to work, but this does then give me two avenues. Number one, if the other device does exactly the same thing, it kind of also supports potentially a issue, or not issue, but a ACL list in place on that. But it also gives me another BT Home Hub that is in a better condition. That one is quite worn by some overly enthusiastic cleaner who has rubbed off all the silk screen on it underneath the icons for the flashing LEDs, as you've seen. But it also gives me something else to play with. Now, as to whether that unit is configured in the same way as this, I have no idea. The seller for this one has been rather quiet, and it was actually the first unit I tried to get hold of before I bid on the ones that I got two that never turned up before I got this one. I gave the seller a lowball offer on this one, and they've actually accepted it, and apparently it should be here this week, but I know nothing about the hub in terms of how it's configured and if it's configured. I did have a look online about actually physically adding the BT Talk details back into this, but as I said in a previous video, that is typically controlled by a portal where the details are then sent to the hub via TR069, or if you do it via the hub itself, it then opens up a login page to BT within the hub that you log in, and it would then send the information directly to the hub. Obviously, none of those exist anymore, and if I do remove the details out of it, we could then potentially be in a position where I'm worse off, because that has nothing in it to even connect to be able to mess around with in the first instance. So it is going to be a bit of a waiting game for the new hub to turn up, and then while that's turning up, I'm going to mess around with some of the exploits to see if I can get the exploits done and anything extracted from it, because I think that is going to be the only way forward with this now. But it has been challenging but fun in the process. So we're not giving up, and the next update for me will be when the hub turns up. So I will see you soon. It hasn't turned up. You honestly cannot make this up. It's been 14 days since I last recorded that clip, and when I ordered that hub, which should have allowed plenty of time for it to turn up and me to cover some bits on it, but it hasn't. The seller has been quiet for almost that entire time period until I raised a dispute with eBay, and they did respond to say, We're really sorry, we've been away on holiday. We had asked someone to sort this out while we were away, but that hasn't happened. Annoyingly, they logged in to accept my initial offer. If they had told me that they were away on holiday when they accepted the offer, I would have been able to sort something else out with all of this and not been waiting for 2 weeks for something that wasn't going to turn up. So I'm somewhat frustrated, but eBay, that is all I can say. And it's not the end of the world. I have seen now that it has actually been posted. So hopefully it should turn up and enable us to do a bit more with it. It's also given me some time to do some research. So this is actually version 1.5 of the hub from 2007, not version 1 that I initially thought. That causes a problem with the exploits. So the CVE exploits, which I'll throw up on the screen here, are for firmware version 6.2.6.b and older. This is running 6.2.6.h, so it's running a much newer version of the firmware. It means all the exploits in this have been patched. Now, some of them are still there in that you can export the config file. The problem is the config file is now fully encrypted and obfuscated, so has little use to us in being able to extract any data from it. So that is problem number whatever we're currently up to. Overall, I am at a bit of a loss in terms of moving forward with it. Now, I had said in a previous video that we might be able to get 2 of these to talk to each other. I highly doubt that is going to work either. The issue with that, with all of this, is that in order for that to work, we're going to need the SIP reinvite process. The SIP reinvite process even is subject to the server supporting it and the hubs. I doubt the server's going to, and why would the hubs at the end of the day? They're not as if they're local to each other, they're different customer sites. So honestly, don't know if that's going to work. We'll give that a go. The other thing I've noticed is while I've been going through and editing it is I never actually checked to see whether the audio stream established between this and this, or whether this was actually looking for another host name or something that it couldn't find. Now, there's bits I still need to go through, and I will do that in part 2, because there's going to be a part 2 to this, because I want this working. If I have genuinely missed anything, or you know something that I don't, let me know in the comments below. I am more than happy to accept support from anyone. This is a community driven channel, and all I want is this working at the end of the day. And if we can get this working and make some calls on it, we will make some calls, and we'll have some calls with some of you guys. So it's in our interest to get it working. If we can't, we can't. I'm a little disappointed we haven't got it fully working, but am I completely annoyed? No. Because taking away from the positives, we've got it connected from a broadband point of view. We've been able to use it to access the internet, and I've used the wireless on this through my phone. It's been fantastic. It's been terrible, but it's been a going back to that time period. The phone, yes, we've not been able to make a two-way audio call on it, but we did get it registered, and it has received a call, and the phone did ring. And having that phone ring after 15 years, when this was originally disconnected and destined for the bin, to me is a win in itself. So it has been a walk down memory lane with all of it. So I am happy. I'm hoping to get the rest of it working, as I said, but if we don't, we don't. But I'm happy to where we've got to with it. And I suppose the key to unlocking all of this is potentially the new hub. I have found another one on eBay that's brand new in box that doesn't have the phone. That, hopefully, depending on its version, might have an older version of the firmware. So I might look at that. But I will literally have to remortgage my house because that one is ridiculously expensive. So there's still avenues to go down. So baby steps. Right, enough of me talking and jabbering. If you are still here, you guys are amazing. I cannot thank you enough. Another company that I have to thank is Zen Internet, guys. If it wasn't for Zen, this channel would not be where we are now, and I would not have you lot following me. They're the ones that initially gave me the disc lamp. It's in the cabinet behind me, and they've also agreed to sponsor me for future bits for hardware that's coming out of the network to enable me to review, go back over, and hopefully get working as well. So Zen, thank you so much. And guys, if you are in the UK and looking for a broadband service provider, go and reach out to Zen. The link is in the video description. They are a fantastic bunch of people, and go and show them some love. Also, the competition or giveaway has come to an end. I have already drawn that. I've done it on Tuesday. I recorded it live. I haven't announced it yet. It will be at the end of this video, and once this goes live, it'll also go live on Gleam as to who's won as well. So if you want to see who's won, jump forward or just look at Gleam, either way. But right, I'm going to go and head off. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I cannot thank you enough. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.